Sixth Sense research that we've been quoting, haven't we? There's some hallelujah, brother. There's this dark part that happens before they talk to a vendor. Well, bloody hell, they've only been doing this for 50 years. Hello and welcome to episode 258 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast. It's Wednesday, the 12th of February. I hope you're well and staying as sane as you feel you need to be. I'm your host, Ian Truscott. I'm not a rockstar, but I am a CMO. And on this podcast, I chat with a group of chums who share their marketing street knowledge, which I hope will bring out the rockstar marketer in you. In the marketing studio this week, Jeff Clark is back and inspired by something by one of his old chums at Forrester as we dive into the broken B2B measurement with 5 points we've pulled from their research. But first, we need to pay the bar tab. I'll be back in a moment.
We'll be right back. We'll be right back.
My dad works in B2B marketing, but I never really knew what that meant. Then one day, my dad came by my school for career day and told everyone in my class he was a big ROAS man. Then he just kept saying things like, the bigger the ROAS, the better, over and over. My friends still laugh at me to this day. I think it means calculating a return on ad spend. One thing's for sure, I'll be known as the ROAS man's kid for the rest of my days. Why couldn't you just be a fireman or a lawyer? Why? You ruined my life, Dad.
Not everyone gets B2B, but LinkedIn has the people who do. And with ads on LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people based on job title, industry, likelihood to buy, and more. Start converting your B2B audience into high-quality leads today. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/MPN to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/MPN. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Forget the frustration of picking commerce platforms when you switch your business to Shopify, the global commerce platform that supercharges your selling wherever you sell. With Shopify, you'll harness the same intuitive features, trusted apps, and powerful analytics used by the world's leading brands. Sign up today for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/tech, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/tech.
Hello, Ian. Welcome to the Rockstar CMO studio.
Thank you, mate. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. It's the beginning of a week. I mean, I don't know when people will be hearing this, but from my perspective,
Wednesday.
It is Monday, and I'm not having the Monday blues. So
that's nice.
That's good.
That is good. I haven't got the Monday blues because I met one of the other people that's on the podcast, Kathy McLight, for lunch today, and Teresa Regley, who's also been on the podcast for lunch today. So I hope they don't mind me revealing the fact that they were around in the United Kingdom for anybody who didn't get invited to lunch today.
Did you interview them during the lunch?
No, we just
could have done one of those lunchtime, hear the clinking of the glasses and the popping of the champagne bottle or whatever, in the background.
Yeah, I think I haven't quite got the setup for that. That need all the travel mics and all that kind of good stuff, wouldn't it? And a production budget that's bigger than what we have, mate. And so, how's the weather in fine Massachusetts?
Well, we're in this pattern now where it seems to snow twice a week.
Nice.
So it's on Thursdays and Saturdays into Sundays. So. So we got a good coating of snow. Lower back is slightly strained, I've been out skiing a couple times, which we're actually, as my wife commented, we're actually having a reasonably normal winter, whereas the last couple have been very abnormal. So so we're okay with that.
Nice.
How about you?
Very cold and grey today, so normal kind of. Nothing dramatic happening like snow or anything. But I think there's been snow in other parts of the country, but not where I am or in London where I was. So So no, indeed. But that does sound nice that you do enjoy the snow. But that lower back pain, man.
Oh, I'll get over it.
Fantastic. So this week, we, as promised, I think I promised it. Anyway, we are inspired. We came across an article by Ross Graber, VP and Principal Analyst at Forrester. I think we've referred to this gentleman a couple of times in the podcast.
At least once,
Ross,
yes.
Yeah. So he's written an article for their blog called The Hard Truth, which refers to the Forrester's 2024 marketing survey. And it revealed that 64% of B2B marketing leaders feel that their organization doesn't trust measurement for decision making. Dun, dun, dun. So, as is fit for our editorial policy, we're going to pick 5 things from this research and our own experience on this challenge and dig into them and make some suggestions on how we fix them. What say you, Jeff?
Well, I say, for one, I used to work real closely with Ross. So anyway, so I certainly value his feedback as what's going on, but it's kind of like, what a bummer, I mean, after the years and years of counseling marketers and being data and fact driven versus being kind of squishy colors and, how's that brand look with you driven? It's kind of disappointing that this is the state. He says marketing, this is a quote of his, marketing is a discipline in which its credibility depends on data, facts, and insights. And yet he notes that it's getting 20% worse. Now, I'm not sure if that's based on the data from the survey or whether that's just, a gut instinct. It's getting worse, but that's why I say it's again, after all the work advising people how to get to being sort of data and insight driven, they ain't there yet.
But the only thing I would say about the reliability of the witness on this data is that it says 64% of B2B marketing leaders feel their organization doesn't trust measurement. So, and I think that might be that. I wonder if that's something to do with the marketing insecurity and imposter syndrome, which is like, I don't think they're paying attention.
Yeah, of course, this is the great thing about statistics is you could say, wow, 45% think they're doing really great. And you'd say, wow, that's a uptick from last I knew.
All right. But anyway, I think it's a good premise. Well, we decided it was a good premise for a conversation.
That's right.
Anyway, didn't we? Because marketing measurement comes up a lot in our conversations with our clients and in various things that we do. So as I mentioned, we've picked 5 things from this article and the research. The bits we can access as non-clients. Because that particular article, and I think that Ross is normally fairly generous in what he shares in his blog posts. Yeah. And Forrester are getting a little bit better about what they share in their blog posts. But so many of the links are just like gated.
Bye.
But anyway.
Bye now. Credit card, submit here.
Yeah.
PayPal.
Oh my God, man. That opens up a whole conversation about analysts being...
How can I put $70,000 on PayPal? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but that's a whole nother level of pay to play, isn't it? That we just sort of... that you do it through micropayments. You want to read a blog post? It's $10.
Yeah.
All right. That might be...
You might be giving them an idea.
All right. So what's the first one, mate?
First one is buying complexity obscures so much. And of course, we've spent a few of the last number of episodes talking about the B2B buying journey, and they're complex. But if you don't understand and track the journey, it's like, how do you engage, your prospects and customers effectively? How do you educate them? How do you move them to close? How do you keep them engaged as customers? Ross notes more people are interacting with sales and marketing more times, places more pressure on measurement systems that are already struggling to capture and make sense of the behavior. So it's just, it's getting more complex. It's a lot more complex than when it was like you're using, your marketing automation platform and half your interactions or more were email and you could track everything to the website and, it's just not that simple.
True, and I think we're going to come to this a few times, isn't it? A lot of marketing motions are not measurable. But also, what I wondered about this, and I've only just thought about it with you mentioning this, is that that opening title in the blog post, "Buying Complexity Obscures So Much." I'm wondering about what metric are you trying to share that the complexity of buying is obscuring? I think there's a little bit of a conversation internally there about what's important to be measured. Okay, so at one end, yes, absolutely, awareness and brand trust and other things we're going to talk about here, but really revenue is the key thing here, isn't it? And I think that we've kind of got a bit spoiled, haven't we, about measuring every single point in the buyer's journey. So I wonder if this is just reality now, that it's not that buying complexity obscures so much, it's just that we perhaps don't need to worry too much about some of those metrics.
Well, I
I've
think
kind of thrown our notes off a little bit there.
you
Sorry.
have thrown off. Yeah, I was like, I'm going scanning up and down the notes, saying, "Where are we?"
I know, but I just thought of it while you were speaking. I thought,
Yeah,
I think that's
and it's a fair point. It's a
Yeah,
fair
yeah.
point, but I think this is where and of course, if I go back to my notes, or back to
Yeah,
the
yeah.
note where I
Yeah.
say, we rolled out the amped, AMPED buyer's journey, and
Mhm.
again we referenced the fact that there are other buying journey models out there that have some
Mm-hmm.
validity, and I think the thing is that if you in your reporting, so we go back to measurement reporting, if in your reporting you can show that you understand what your buyer journey looks like, or your
Yes.
buyer's journeys look like, and you have a model that kind of fits the approach that your business is on. Are we all about net new revenue, or are we about recurring revenue, or
Yeah.
were we about pocket or wallet share from big organizations? So you need to tune the systems and your measurement practices to that journey. So it's like we can, if you can report on the fact that we know of all of our, I'll just, pull out for an example of all of our target accounts, we know that X number of them, X percent are in the market. Well, that's pretty good. Oh, and now we know that we're able to attract another Y percent of that to our properties, or our third party, campaign tactics. And then we're able to, just kind of like you follow down the road, just kind of like you would think of, and I hesitate use the word lead funnel, but it's like you're tracking along a process,
Yeah.
and the process is not clean like a lean funnel, but you've got certain measures that you're tracking to say, look, we're doing a great job here, we're not doing such a good job here. Once we've captured customers, we're not engaging them as well, post purchase, blah blah blah. And what is marketing doing to address those?
Yeah. And some of it is the signals, isn't it, that you pick up? So I think listening to you speaking there, if you've mapped out your, as we described, the amped buyer's journey, and of course I'll include a link to that in the show notes. If you've got content that is very specific to each of those buyer's stages, then you can look for signals, can't you, about what people are interested in. So an obvious example, if somebody looks at your pricing page, there's probably a greater level of purchase intent than somebody who's not, right? Who just downloads a white paper or something. So I think, yes, absolutely. So the fix for this, so the question was, buying complexity obscures so much, and the fix for this is to get amped.
Which does not mean stick your finger in the wall socket.
Yeah. So I think the next one, and I'll just introduce this one, because this is right up our street, and probably more specifically right up my street as a marketing technologist, right? Because both of us have done a fair amount of time in marketing operations and technology. So number 2 that Ross identified is that technology sprawl gives us fractured data. So a go-to-market stack that's got fractured leads, disconnected data sources, and of course, if you've got that, it makes reporting very difficult. And I think we've often talked about silos, the enemy of
silos
everybody.
of data.
And I think we've both had this experience. So what have you seen, Jeff?
Well, stitching together what's happening across a buyer's journey is very difficult, and is very time consuming. And we discussed this back in the 5 characteristics of being data driven, is that you've got to be able to, one, identify, how if you've got all these disconnected pieces of technology, it's like, so are there things that those technology are picking up that is specific and is credible to that piece of technology? And what do you need to actually pull together in more of a unified data platform, whether it's a customer data platform, your CRM system, data lakes, blah, 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 so you can start looking at engagement across an entire journey and again, look for signals that show you, where you're being successful or not across the journey. So it's it's a difficult process, but it's like the first one. It's funny because number two, the technology sprawl, is a result of the fact that the buyer journey is difficult, and the more pieces of technology we get, the harder it is to like make sense of it all together.
Yeah, and I think oh yeah, absolutely. And I think yes, we wanted yes, there was a point there in the notes that's completely lost, that I've completely lost. But I think that's absolutely right. It's about the
You can just say that's
technology.
right, Jeff. Thank you.
No, I am absolutely going to say that's right, Jeff. But the other thing I think is that sometimes, and I don't know where the appropriate time to introduce this point is in here, is you've got to make sure the juice is worth the squeeze with some of these things. I think that we can be sent off down a bit of a rabbit hole of data, can't we? I don't know why I've entered this conversation feeling a bit contrary, but is it really worth half a day of your time to every other week to find this noodle of data? And so I think, you've really got to make sure you're measuring the right things if it's getting this hard, right? So I think that where you're talking about, this technology sprawl and this fractured data, well, you need, before you embark on this integration, you need to make sure that you're going to get value from it and if it's worth doing, right? So I think there's some of that, because I think sometimes we get asked something, we're like, yeah, I can find this out for you, because we're curious and we're data led and we know it's possible, and we go away and we spend a couple of days on it, and then no fucker ever looks at it.
Well, that is, yes, that is definitely the definition of a rabbit hole. Like, why'd you go? I got to go fix this, this table mapping to this table to get me to this, and it's like, oh,
yeah.
Nobody really
But you
cares.
willingly go down the rabbit hole, but it's only a sort of a few months later you sort of scratch your head and go, well, that took quite a lot of work, and it turns out that it was a transient question that got asked in a meeting that nobody actually has very little, daily concern for the executive that asked it. But okay, so anyway, so we talked about the challenge there with the unified data. So what else would you add? What do we need to do?
Your juice is worth the squeeze metaphor works here because another element we often talk about is eliminating tech that is not useful. It's not worth the juice you either put into it or you're getting out of it. Because that does create random disconnected sets of data that may not be helpful in your understanding of the journey. And then if you can't, there's kind of like the two elements are, I shouldn't say two elements, but the two considerations for the data from any piece of technology is, can I actually get useful information that I can pull into my unified data store that helps me understand the journey? And then are there specific things that are important to the users of that technology that are not necessarily, important for this journey issue, but they're important for, that individual user, whether that person is the guy who's running the website or running your marketing automation platform. There are things there that may be helpful or social. There may be things that the PR team needs to know, but just it's not really part of your journey map. And so from a data perspective, those are kind of the two sets of decisions that you have to make. And then if it doesn't help with either, kill it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that when we talk about tech, we often come to two particular pieces of advice. One of those is audit what you have, and the other thing is be quite judicious in what you add to this as you bring in more data, because this problem that we're talking about, that Ross has identified, is often the problem of bloat, isn't it? Of MarTech bloat, where we've kind of unrestrained, people have got stuff on credit cards, all that bollocks, right? So Absolutely. So we're in the tech rabbit hole now, mate, and we can't avoid the most prevalent tech trend right now. So the third is
AI-inflated hope drives an expectation gap.
Uh-huh.
So that is certainly AI in general. People or probably executives who are not focused on exactly what a particular tool is going to do for you. If you have advocated for something and you're still having problems with reporting, because actually I should take a quick step back and say, one of the promises of AI is that it does help go through large quantities of data to determine trends, insights, things that are very hard, if not impossible, for a human to uncover. But if you get to purchase something, maybe you've got a tool that has AI features as part of it, and then you're still having a problem, and the executive turns around and he says, well, we authorized that purchase of the shiny toy.ai, and your reporting is still way off. So what's up?
Yeah.
So this is where one of the rules of AI, and I remember presenting this with one of my Forrester colleagues a couple years ago, was the fact that the AI tool, and I just saying broadly in general, because obviously there's AI features in everything from digital asset management to CDPs, et cetera. But the AI is only as good as the data it's drawing upon and learning from. So if you gotta almost have to solve gap number 2 before you can be effective in executing on using AI to help you with this problem.
Especially if you run experiments. So, I mean, for example, with a client, I've run a PPC experiment, and the form fields that came back were lovely and everything. They just weren't the ICP, and they didn't really hit on the thing. But the AI or whatever it is that's inside the PPC engine is saying, this has been great. Let's do more of this. And you're like, well, you don't know that these aren't quite right? So you have to have the human eye on that stuff too, don't you? So it's not just giving AI a big data set, it's giving it the good stuff, I think. So, and it's a bit like our earlier point with the bringing together the silos, isn't it? And it's about unifying and cleansing your data, but making sure that you're showing to AI only what it can use, what would be value to it. Yeah. Is there, what else should we focus on when we're looking at?
Well,
AI?
I think there's two things, and one is that you make sure that you've got the data and analytical skills on staff to help you make the AI tools in your CDP or the CRM deliverable insights. Because these things aren't a simple kind of plug and play solution, even though they sometimes are pitched that way. So you got to really have people who understand how to make this stuff work well. And then the other thing is that there's a bit of an enablement challenge, because you've got to be able to tell your stakeholders, what can they accurately determine from and get insights from their existing tools. What can they will get from anything you're building that's more of a unified, maybe AI enabled platform. So I think some of the clients that I worked with who were doing this well is they understood there was the build problem and there was the enablement problem, and you need skills on both sides to be able to make sure people are getting what they need from a reporting and measurement and reporting perspective.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the same for all marketing technology, isn't it? I think that's a really good point. But the other thing with AI, I think, is, and it's a bit like what I've also seen with CMOs and agencies, is you can't outsource your brain. Like I think that you can get
not maybe in 2030.
but I think
But not yet.
I think you get way more out of these tools if you're a subject matter expert and you know what you're doing, which is why I'm glad to hear you say that you need data and analytical skills, not AI skills, right? So we need to really be focused on what it is we want to get out of the AI, not just oh, that looks great. And I think I've had this conversation about AI generated content. Is if you don't know the topic and you ask ChatGPT to write something, it's perfectly passable and believable and looks fine, but it'll be perfectly average and middle of the road. It isn't. But if you're a subject matter expert, you can then drill into it and ask it further questions and get better, and it'll come back with something a little bit more meaty. And I guess it's the same with the data, isn't it? If you know what you're looking at, you can then help with your queries. I've gone off there on one, haven't I, for a bit? I wasn't supposed to do that. So basically, we're talking about data, tools, and skills, which is often something we're recommending to get it back.
And technology. People
Yeah.
process technology and data.
Absolutely. So the next one.
What's number 4?
Well,
That's
yes,
yours.
It's right up my street, this one, isn't it? So the way Ross describes this, and by the way, the titles of each of the ones comes from the blog post, doesn't it, Jeff? These aren't our words.
Except for the fifth one. The fifth one's ours.
Oh, the fifth one's ours, yeah. So this one, number 4, measurement can't keep up with a renewed emphasis on reputation investment. Well, that sounds like fancy words for brand to me, right? So
it sure is.
Yeah, and it says that measurement can't keep up with a renewed emphasis on reputation investment. There is so much work being done in that sentence everywhere, all over, right? Because I think I am delighted with the renewed emphasis on reputation investment, i.e. brand, right? I think there's a lot of conversation at the moment that brand is notoriously difficult to measure, especially in the short term. But it's a marketing multiplier because everything performs better. Your PPC performs better as people trust your links. SEO works better because they search you by name. And then if they know you, they'll open your emails. And I think, as Ross in the article observes, B2B marketing investments have traditionally skewed towards capturing and advancing demand. And so too has the focus of marketing measurement. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, what I was a bit, I think this point from Ross is a bit light on solutions, to be honest with you. I think if you click through and you're a client, you can find out some other stuff. But, this is the challenge at the moment for marketers, isn't it, about measurement? We can justify our own existence with these easier to calculate metrics that Ross was just talking about in terms of demand. And all those sort of signals that we can see in the vanity metrics, we can more easily calculate those, but we can't so much measure brand. It's quite difficult to measure that. And some of it comes to you sort of anecdotally, doesn't it? Like a sales guy says, oh, the prospect had heard of us, or, you see an uplift in PPC, but that takes time. It's hard to attribute any of that stuff through. Plus, and what I like here is there is definitely a trend on this, which is great. Because I read a job description for a CMO advisor, one of the big firms, who I won't mention. And in the job description, it said, make the business case to the CEO, CFO, and other senior leaders around the need to invest in brand awareness as opposed to lead generation. I'm like, wow, bravo. But it's a big challenge, right?
Did the CEO write that job description, or was that HR saying we need somebody who can...
I know which side of the divide that was written by. That was definitely written by a marketer, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
But this is the challenge, and I think that you and I probably, in some of the research that we're doing, need to do more than just say brand is important, but it's difficult to measure, and we need to sort of figure that out. So, what do you add to that?
Well, as I was reading some of your notes on this, I was thinking back to a famous ad back in the 60s. Not that I didn't see it in the 60s, but a book I had read had referenced it, but it was by McGraw-Hill, and it shows kind of the average kind of elder executive of that time period, who's just his quotes saying, "I don't know who you are. I don't know your company. I don't know your company's products. I don't know your reputation, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. So now what is it you wanted to sell me?" And it ends with the sales starts before your salesman calls. And, this is one of those things where it's like, obviously McGraw-Hill, they're in the publishing business. They were trying to sell the value of advertising through, their publications. Yeah. And it's like, we're still, here we are in the 2020s, and we're still, having to make this pitch about the fact that brand is so important. But you're very right that it kind of gets back to, okay, you tell me it's important. I get I get it on maybe a rational basis, but tell me how you're going to measure how it's working for us.
Yeah, and you know what I love about that, mate? The old quote that you've dug up, and we do this all the time. I mean, I'm constantly referring to one-to-one marketing, which was a book written in like the '60s, or all the old stuff. And that phrase there at the end, where you're talking about sales starts before your salesman calls. That's almost the Sixth Sense research that we've been quoting, haven't we? As some hallelujah, brother. There's this dark part that happens before they talk to a vendor. Well, bloody hell, they've only been doing this for 50 years. So I think that's incredible. But anyway, and then when we were talking about the fix for this and prepping for this, in the notes I put get another CEO.
Yes, that's right.
I think it's a tough one, isn't it? Because we all need to be on the same page on this one. That the brand work isn't going to have an instant measurable impact, but it's important that we're building those foundations, and we can talk about the long and short of it and all that kind of stuff. And then Forrester, and so Ross of the Forrester stuff, if you click through, they talk about having clear reputational objectives, and they have their models which are all gated. But one of the things I thought I'd refer to here is I love the idea of clear reputational objectives. I just don't know what they would be, right? What would you have as your reputation objectives? Be trusted.
Get a good one.
But I thought I'd also, our chum Grant Johnson has actually done some research into this. And I know that I like to share what we're normally doing, but I think Grant has gone really deep into the whole marketing measurement thing. And he's been on this show talking about his marketing performance index, right? MPI.
Yeah.
So I'll include a link to that in the show notes, a link to his website, not to that conversation. And he suggests that brand strength has two key KPIs. I said key KPIs, which is a repeat of the K, isn't it? It's two KPIs: engagement and loyalty. So engagement is about your firm's relative level of engagement in key, and he talks about social media sites and attendees at events and communities of interest. And he talks about, and the second KPI is loyalty. So you need to have better than average scores for standard metrics like NPS, CSAT, as well as net retention and how much, where people are coming back and buying more from you, right? And I think this is interesting because the challenge here, I think, is for smaller organizations is how do you go about doing that? That data is pretty thin, isn't it? So I think it's an interesting place to go. Have you got any other suggestions where we might go for measuring brand?
Well, the first thing I have to say is because your idea about getting another CEO is that for our CMOs out there is that you can manage up, but you can't fire up. So getting another CEO means going someplace else.
Yeah.
And in episode 112 that we did on brand measurement,
Wow.
kind of went through the long and short of these relevant brand measures, and I think we did that. That was before we had Grant on to talk about his index.
Yeah.
But the idea with his matrix, which we kind of touched on in that episode, is that there are measures short term and long term. And so if you think about the things you can track, let's say that what can I track short term? I can, with social and PR measurement tools, I can track share of voice, I can track social engagement, I could track community growth, probably with some web metrics. I can kind of just track brand association, like where we associated with particular product categories or particular attributes. But then there's other brand metrics that are have to be measured on the long term. So generally, brand awareness, product preference, or company preference, those things, typically are done through surveys, focus groups, et cetera. And you've got to look at the track over the long haul. And so the trick is determining what you can track on the short-term basis. In some cases, and this is an idea actually pulled from the author of the article, Ross, is that you can index them together. So let's say we're trying to focus on early stage brand awareness, and it's okay. There's a number of metrics that, like share of voice or whatever, that we can get to. So if you sort of put them together and index them and say, we're doing X, this is where we're starting point, and we're doing our work is trying to like move the needle to improve that index. So, some metrics, may go up and down, some metrics, but you want to look at the trend overall. And that's one way of getting to the, how do I report on brand in some sort of regular basis with the other things I'm reporting on, demand metrics, engagement, et cetera, that can be legitimate. And of course, part of this trick is getting, and this is another enablement thing. You've got to teach your audience, these are the things we can measure. These are the things that we think are valid. And we may refine this over time if we find that some measures are not helping us understand how we're doing. But ultimately you want to be able to get that agreement with the executive team you're reporting to, that this kind of indexing and this method is actually reporting on the health of the brand.
Right. Okay.
It was a long-winded answer to your question.
But, it was. So yes, this 20-minute episode.
I had a short-winded note, so I had a anyway.
But I mean, we need to answer the question, and I also think that because we spent so long measuring demand and those kinds of metrics, that I think with a bit more focus, we'll probably come up with some really good standard metrics for B2B, because a lot of this stuff is very B2C focused, like NPS and stuff like that, right? So we need to figure out what are the ways to measure, a mid-sized SaaS company or something like that in this way. So I think it's an interesting topic of research. But what I do like there is that Ross was saying a renewed emphasis on reputation investment, which is music to any marketer's ears, I should think. So what have we got as the fifth then, mate?
The exec team is not on board with what you're reporting. So if we go back to like this original stats, 65% don't believe that that their reporting is landing well with their audience. And in this case, we're talking about the executive team. We're working with them to kind of help them understand, we're trying to answer your business questions. So there's a discovery process. And then from that discovery process of the things you're trying to understand of what's working in marketing, we're going to put a plan together. And we're going to socialize that with you, and we maybe have some draft outputs, wireframes of dashboards or whatever. So we get your input. We're going to document that. And then as we kind of go through the process of reporting, we're going to continue to refine the work that we do. And we laid this out in the blog, 5 steps for CMOs to get aligned with their executive team on metrics.
So yes, so a lot there, isn't there?
Well, it's a process that I think a lot of marketers don't want to go through, and probably CMOs don't necessarily want to go through, because it takes work. But it's essential to understand, again, what the questions your business audience, your audience has, and what can you provide to answer those questions. And then if they have things they want to drill down on, how do you do that? And if things change, the situations change, we're going to focus more on brand this year. Yay. Then what do you do to meet that new need?
It's also similar to what we were discussing a couple of weeks ago, I think, about general communication, isn't it, with the exec team on that. So yes, okay. So that was the fifth then. So the 5 things we covered there was buying complexity obscures so much. Technology sprawl gives us fractured data. AI-inflated hope drives an expectation gap. Number 4, measurement can't keep up with renewed emphasis on reputation investment. And number 5, the exec team is not on board with what you're reporting. And each of those is in a blog post by Ross Graber, VP Principal Analyst at Forrester, in his article called The Hard Truth, which I'll link to in the show notes. And also a whole bunch of links there of our opinions from other things that we've done there. So that just leaves us with the last agenda item, Jeff, the song.
Well, we have bantered back and forth on this song. Because we kept putting fixes in the show notes. I was thinking about the song "Fix You" from Coldplay, but you wanted to be a little bit more positive and upbeat. So what was your pick?
Well,
Which I think
there's
is the one we're going to go with.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, yeah. I went for a few. I liked Dizzy Rascal Fix Up Look Sharp, but I think only the UK listeners would have heard of that one. But I'm going to go with an absolute stone cold classic and Move On Up by Curtis Mayfield from 1971. And we talked
Before
about
our
classics
time.
earlier on, right? So that's fair enough. And he says, remember your dream is your only scheme, so keep on pushing. And I think that's the thing that we're talking about here, isn't it? All right, mate. So that's quite enough of that for now. So we will be returning to the studio next week, I think, right?
I believe we will, yes.
Yes, and we'll be chatting then. And until then, mate, I'll see you then. I'll play out with you a bit of Move On Up, and then I'll speak to you next week.
Sounds good. Take
Cheers,
care.
buddy.
Hush now, child, and don't cry. Your folks might understand you by and by. Just move on up toward your destination.
Thank Jeff, a little bit of Curtis Mayfield there. And of course, thanks to Ross Graber of Forrester for the inspiration. And Ross is well worth a follow if you're interested in some of those topics we've just covered. So that's a wrap on episode 258 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast. Thank you for dropping a dime into your podcasting jukebox, selecting our track and jiving along with us. I've been your host, Ian Truscott, and you can find links to me, Jeff, and all the things we referred to there in the show notes on rockstarcmo.com, as well as our blog, newsletter, and all of our previous episodes. We'd love to hear from you, so please reach out via their website or LinkedIn, but please let us know you're a listener. Just search Rockstar CMO. I'm sure you'll find us. The next episode of The Rose and Rockstar with Robert Rose will be drop on Saturday, and next week Jeff and I will be sharing the 5 fundamentals of brand measurement, picking up on this conversation. Until then, enjoy the rest of the week, and I hope you'll again join us here again on Rockstar CMO FM.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Robbie Samuels hosts the On the Schmooze podcast. Robbie, tell listeners what to expect from the show.
Since 2015, I've interviewed entrepreneurs who overcame challenges to achieve success in their field or industry. Tune in to On the Schmooze to listen as I ask deep questions to elicit untold stories about leadership and networking.
And where can people subscribe?
Find the show at ontheschmooze.com or on marketingpodcast.net, or just search for it wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard them. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.